We need people to know that if you go too in favor of Israel, you're going to pay a heavy price too. If my movement really put America first, it means we are going to have to sideline, by definition, Jews that put the Jewish nation first.
And Christians too, for that matter, who put Israel first. I understand getting pushed to the level of like, the Jews. Like, I get it.
I am a Reva, and I was taught how to pray Salah.
That means every single time I pray,
the person who told me gets the reward.
5 times a day, from Fajr to Isha.
If you want to support someone like me in learning Salah,
then sponsor 10 people for just £100.
Remember the Prophet, peace be upon him, said,
charity does not decrease wealth. Click the button and donate now.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. If you're watching this video and it's Salah time, please pause it and go pray and come back when you're done. Please check out the description section of this video to support the channel. I just saw a podcast featuring Dave Smith and Nick Fuentes, two people that are on different sides of the political spectrum. And although I personally don't completely agree with both these guys' political stances, especially Nick Fuentes, who has had some very disrespectful takes on Islam, I did find some common ground with both of them in regards to the topic of Jewish supremacy. This is particularly significant since Dave is Jewish, Nick is Christian, and I myself am a Muslim. Let's take a look.
Netanyahu goes around and brags about what Israel can do. Israel can't do shit. Israel can only do things because they have the full backing of the United States of America. So, like, sorry, if you're in the world of talking about these things, you don't get to pass on this one. Like, right. You got to have an opinion.
It's a cop-out where you can say, I'm not pro-Israel, but I'm not anti-Israel. I just don't care. And that really pissed me off because it seems like you're feigning ignorance. You're either lying or you're really ignorant. And the reason why is because, be that as it may, that you don't care about Israel, we happen to be supporting their war, and it's actually hurting us. And so people say, well, let them kill each other. If you've been paying attention, one side's doing a lot more killing. Yeah. We're paying for it. We are, on the hook for all of it. And until it stops or changes, we can't stop talking about it.
There's a price tag to be paid for opposing Israel. First of all, just for moral reasons, like, I'm not budging on an issue of genocide. I'm not doing that. But on top of that, just for sovereignty reasons, even if you don't go nearly as far as me, let alone as far as you, Benjamin Netanyahu is a neocon, at the very least, right? Like, at the very least, he's a guy who testified before Congress advocating we fight the war in Iraq, in Libya, and advocates we fight a regime change war in Iran. If a guy with that track record was appointed as Secretary of State or as the Defense Secretary, every non-interventionist has to be against that guy. So how can you can't be for him. They don't want to pay the price of being an Israel critic, but I think there's a new price that's going to come from not taking a stand on this at all.
I totally agree, and I have kind of made that my mission. Whether it's Kent, Trump, Biden, Charlie Kirk, if you go against Israel, they make you pay a heavy price. AIPAC is coming in with the berserkers. The ADL's coming in like, you're going to pay. So what do? Hey, I got to get them off my back. I got to disavow you. I have to sign the letter. It's easier. It's the path of least resistance. We have to create an opposing force and push in the other direction. We need people to know that if you go too in favor of Israel or condemn the Israel critical right, you're going to pay a heavy price too. You're going to get, and we don't have money power, but we got people power. You're going to have somebody in your district asking you about Israel at every stop. You're going to have stickers put up. We're going to make a website. We're going to do this. Yeah. We need to make it visible and known, like, AIPAC has the money. We have the votes. And like you said, we can't budge on that.
We likely assume Israel's just going to continue doing what they're doing. We know for a fact that even if they did, nothing would change. Even if Donald Trump says, you must stop doing this now, nothing will change if they continue to do it. And that, to me, is so obviously indefensible, that, like, you have a country who is propping up another country, and that this country's commander-in-chief has zero influence over telling them to stop what they're doing.
Both Dave Smith and Nick Fuentes were in agreement that Jewish elites, as well as Zionists from varied backgrounds, are manipulating the US and the wider West in favour of Israel. Nick Fuentes called out fence-sitters on this topic as being either willfully ignorant or just outright liars. They both made the point that the US being dragged into numerous Israeli conflicts in the Middle East, the most recent being the Gaza genocide, is unacceptable. And anyone silent on the matter is by default complicit, due to the American establishment having blood on their hands through their direct involvement. Both Nick Fuentes and Dave Smith acknowledge the severe consequences involved for anyone who dares to question this political manipulation, let alone oppose it, from Jewish supremacist organisations such as AIPAC and the ADL. The solution proposed by Nick Fuentes was that there has to be an equal and opposing force in the opposite direction, where there are severe consequences for bad faith actors who put Israeli interests before the interests of America, or any other nation that they may be residing in for that matter. As Nick Fuentes said, people excluded from the ideology of Zionism may not have the same financial strength. However, they are much greater in numbers, and that is what they should use to their advantage to curtail pro-Israeli influence through legal means. Dave Smith correctly pointed out that urgent action is required due to Israel being a rogue state that could cause global chaos at the drop of a hat, because no one holds them accountable. Let's roll the next clip.
I really rose up on Israel's most wanted list, and I was swarmed and in what seemed to be kind of coordinated, but I don't know. But there just all of a sudden, like, my Twitter experience changed, and it's everybody with everyone with Hebrew letters in their name is furious at me and all this. And I had never really been like, I had never quite had that before. I'd never quite had like a mob after me like that. Mm-hmm. And I'm Jewish. I'm as inoculated against like falling into this as you could be. And I will tell you, man, like there were moments where I just found myself be like dude, it's like by the time you're having the most disingenuous, annoying fucking like rabbi, like just and doing like the dumbest thing ever. They attack you, and then if you defend yourself, they go, he doth protest too much. You're like, you, and it almost feels in a way like it almost seems like that's the point of their existence.
Yes.
Like it almost seems like Rabbi Shmuley, you're like, what fucking character from Adolf Hitler's play did you spring to life in? If I'm going to be completely honest, it's like, I see that, and then I go, well, so like, I understand like getting pushed to the level of like, fuck the Jews. Like, I get it.
My big worry is the conversation going to stop at, we need to end all these wars and like the neocons are the problem? Because my critique goes further. And it says that it actually does have to do with Jewish identity. Jewish identity is so powerful and so potent. Jews refuse to assimilate. They're so powerful. They're so tribalistic. They're loyal to each other. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And that is actually where the Israel loyalty proceeds from. It's this anxiety. We need Israel because what happens if it goes south here? We need to be powerful in America to prevent a majority from rising up against us. I recognize Jews are a part of America. They always have been, and they're some of the finest Americans, actually. But people recognize it cannot go on this way where we have an open society, but they have this loyalty and kind of play by a different set of rules.
There's an energy that you harness when you do that, and you know what you're doing with it, And that's not to say you're being disingenuous. I don't mean that at all. But to the broader, like, kind of Jewish conversation, obviously, the neocons, the majority of whom were Jewish, it's not just like, I'm not claiming like, oh, they just happen to be Jewish. Like, their Jewish identity obviously plays a central role in why, they feel the way they do. There's a sickness in Jewish culture that I think is unhealthy. I think it's part of it is fundamentally built into the religion that like it's about past suffering, particularly like my parents' generation and up. I think not as much with the younger generation, but it looms so large, and there is this kind of like feeling of like, look, the Holocaust happened, and then we created our own state so that it never happens again. And anything short of that means another Holocaust happening, and then it's not right. Like it just doesn't make any sense. I'm a Jewish American. I've never had one obstacle put in my way because of my Jewishness, like never once, To oppose Israel isn't to oppose Jewish people, and that's kind of stupid. This is an actual government.
Dave Smith spoke about how despite being Jewish himself, he's been on the receiving end of a targeted harassment campaign from pro-Israel influencers who are hired by the Israeli government to push propaganda on their behalf. Dave claimed that this type of behaviour feeds into a negative perception of Jewish people, so much so that he himself can relate to why his own people are being negatively stereotyped. To be fair, there are normal down-to-earth Jewish people like Dave Smith and many others, just as there are those that are completely toxic, and the same can be said about every community. However, the alarming factor seems to be that people who subscribe to the ideology of Zionism fall more so into the toxic category. And yes, Zionists can come from all walks of life. However, the harsh reality is that there is a majority of Jewish people, in particular Israelis, that follow that problematic ideology. Nick Fuentes made the point that stopping Israel from creating conflict is only the first step, with the larger battle being the reversal of the ingrained supremacist mentality held by them and their supporters. measures, as this would be to the benefit of society as a whole. Dave Smith made the claim that there are some concerning issues within Jewish culture also. As someone without inside knowledge, I can neither confirm nor deny this. However, Dave, again as a Jewish person, is definitely qualified to speak on the matter. And I think it was very honest of him to talk about the privilege he has due to his background, as well as the negative aspects of his culture, and why the actions of the Israeli government have done the most damage to the reputation of his people. Let's watch the last clip.
I distinguish myself as a white person, as someone from Christendom, as an American, and I'm looking to disentangle the Jewish interest from the American interest. Why is it that the Holocaust is so toxic? It's because, Jews sort of made it that way. Like, we don't look at the Holodomor the same way. We don't look at China. And all these arguments.
I think that's a totally legitimate argument. It's something I've been saying for years, too. I think that the idea that Jews have a monopoly on World War II is like insane. And
right.
or that anybody should, like prioritize past Jewish suffering over other sufferings. I'd be like, yeah, it's a horrible thing happened.
When I look at like Larry Fink, Bill Ackman, David and Larry Ellison, I look at them as part of a corporate entity. Like they're not individuals that happen to be Jewish. They are the Jews. They're organized. They work together. And as an American, I basically want to take power from them and give it back to Americans. And that necessarily is going to make them weaker and more vulnerable as a community. And, so when they say that's anti-Semitic, it's like, of course, everything that's taking power from them to give it to us is going to inherently bolster the narrative that they're becoming more vulnerable. But it's a necessary part of getting power.
In the Israel lobby itself, it's not all Jews. It is overwhelming large amount of Jews. And like the neoconservatives were like 80% Jewish. I think that, there were Catholics and even some Protestants in there. It seems much more to me that there's a big club. There's a lot of Jews in there, and there's non-Jews in there as well, and that they are screwing everybody over. And it just seems to me to be more accurate and precise, and not carry any of the baggage that makes people think like you just are animated by racial hatred. And it's just more precise to just be like, no, it's these guys, it's this network of people.
Where I would push back is saying that, let's say for example, like Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison is the second richest guy in the world. They're buying the media. Him and his son are buying TikTok. They're buying CBS. Who does he put in charge of CBS? Bari Weiss. Bari Weiss was helped by Hazony and Brett Stevens. It's like, that very clearly is a Jewish club. And they're cutting through society. And yeah, they run in other elite circles. And yeah, they have their accomplices that are not Jewish. Even, look at the Trump administration. Trump brokered that deal. He's a Gentile. But he got money from Miriam Adelson. And his grandchildren are Jewish because his son-in-law is Jewish. And it's like, it's almost like that exception doesn't prove the rule. It seems that society is always being pushed by this organized minority. You do have like a World Zionist Congress. You do have a World Jewish Congress. You have the, Conference of Major American Jewish Organizations. I don't even think people realize the extent to which Jews are organized in community centers by Chabad, in university with their fraternities, and in business, and in their localities. If my movement wants to have power and really put America first, it means we are going to have to sideline, by definition, Jews that put the Jewish nation first.
And and Christians too, for that matter. I mean,
I disagree. I think America's
I'm saying Christians who put Israel first.
Oh,
for that matter, too.
For
so
sure.
I'm saying, which there are plenty of. I think that's very true for evangelical Christians who are constantly having preachers, tell them that like this is your duty, is to have this political outlook. There's tens of millions of them. Again, you can always say, well, that's the Jews manipulating them, but again, it just seems like this is presuming the conclusion. It's like,
we are we not being manipulated though in that way?
Of course. No, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying it's not just Jews at the top of the manipulation.
That's where I have to come in as a Christian white American and say we have to disentangle these things.
And I feel the same way about Jews in general. It's like we got to wake them up and be like, yo, you're not about to be Holocausted, and you don't need to support this in order to avoid one.
Dave and Nick made the point that Jewish people are not the only group that have experienced a Holocaust, and the fact that we're led to believe the tragic event they experienced holds more importance than others is not fair on other groups. It's open knowledge that the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad influences the educational system and history books in the West and prioritizes Jewish suffering over other groups. I am in no way minimizing what happened in World War II, but with Netanyahu weaponizing what happened to his own people during the Second World War to carry out a modern-day Holocaust in Gaza, he's inadvertently cast doubt over his own people's history due to him being a pathological liar and a warmonger. As Dave said, everyone's suffering is equally as important. Nick Fuentes highlighted that the real problem is with Jewish elitists who are exploiting ordinary Americans, which extends to ordinary people across the world. Nick Nick made the point that addressing this imbalance of power is not anti-Semitic, it's a moral necessity in order to level the playing field. Dave also made a valid point when he said that Israeli lobbies, though majority Jewish, also consist of other groups such as Christian Zionists, and that all these elitists are in cahoots in exploiting ordinary people outside their group. Nick Fuentes gave an interesting response to Dave's claim, as in non-Jewish Zionists are permitted to be in these power circles, only if they agree to serve Jewish supremacist interests. And he backed this up by listing off various media and social media companies being bought off by Jewish elites to control the global narrative, mold perceptions worldwide, with the ultimate goal of pushing their supremacist agenda. Both Dave and Nick were in agreement that in order for us to have a truly fair and free society, this toxic ideology has to go. There's no denying that there's a mass awakening taking place across the world, with the Gaza genocide exposing how the Israeli state and their backers are responsible for global unrest. And now that the genie is out of the bottle, we must work vigorously to put an end to this supremacy for the betterment of humankind. Thank you for watching. Until next time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah.